Will the tax relief make things worse for Canadians?
Yes.
Okay. Is this a short-sighted policy by the government?
Yes.
Does this introduce complexity into Canada's food retail system?
Absolutely. Yes.
So would you call this a misstep by the government?
I would say yes. And that's exactly what I said at Senate when I testified with David Dodge, the former governor of the Bank of Canada. Both him and I agreed that it was really just bad fiscal policy overall. Essentially, in my view, essentially because it was a temporary measure. If you play around with taxes temporarily, it will open up the door to opportunity pricing, for example. So if you give a couple of percentages to retailers, they'll go and try to grab that extra, 2-3%, and you can actually see inflation becoming a problem again. That's been my number one concern since day one, both retail and service. So at the restaurant and at the grocery store, it's certainly very short-sighted. I don't see how Canadians will win over time. At the restaurant, of course, you're looking at major savings outside of Quebec, for example, or where there's harmonized sales tax, including Ontario. I would say that right now, a lot of people are going out. They're noticing that, well, they don't have to pay taxes, which is really, it makes a big difference. But at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily mean that menu prices aren't moving. My guess is that, and I've actually seen some menu prices already increasing as a result of more traffic with the holidays and the fact that there is a GST holiday as well.
So isn't that, let me play the devil's advocate here. I think I agree with mostly everything you've said, but let me play the devil's advocate
Sure.
here. Will that not be the fault of the retailers in that case? Because that shouldn't be the fault of the government, because now retailers are leveraging on that. Now they, in quote, removed taxes from their products, right? And then they bump up the price without consumers noticing that. That's what you mean, right? But wouldn't that be a retailer's fault instead of government fault?
Well, of course, Aaron. I mean, it would be the retailers that would actually do this, but the role of government is to anticipate behavior, good or bad. It is a free market, and so companies will behave based on how policies shift over time. Opportunistic behavior is not something new. It's always been there. If you actually open up the door, if there is an opportunity for businesses to make more money, especially when margins are incredibly thin, and this is what's unusual with
Right.
food compared to other sectors. I mean, you're in a sector where margins are much, much more significant. In
Right.
food, it's a game of pennies. Pennies. So if you
Mm.
can get that extra penny or two, you will go after it. So the role of government, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is, of course, retailers and businesses, but the role of businesses is to make money. And the role of government is to anticipate opportunistic behavior.
Part of what you're into in your article is that it's going to introduce an overhead cost for retailers during this period. And we've seen cases where businesses have simply said they're not able to implement it, especially the smaller businesses. I think bigger corporations like the Costco and the like, they're able to quickly implement that. But if it introduces an overhead administrative cost for businesses, are we draining businesses more where many of them are already, strained in this economy because of affordability crisis and the cost of goods and services? Is that introducing more problems for retailers?
I think so. I mean, essentially, you're asking, and I have to look at retailers more that, or grocers more than restaurants, because the restaurant side of things is pretty simple. I mean, recoding the system,
True.
because everything is taxed the same.
Yeah.
It's if you're in Ontario, it's the provincial sales tax, the federal sales tax, harmonized, and you just recode and you're done. In a
Hmm.
grocery store, you have 20,000 SKUs. Of the 20,000, about 4,600, you have a taxable product. So you got to basically go almost manually over the list and see exactly what products are exempt and which product are not exempt, because not all taxable products at the grocery store are exempt right now. So you have to basically go through manually, and we calculate it's about 200 to 300 human hours of work if you're in an independent grocer, and that's a lot of money. Now, there's what's worse, I think, is the confusion and the chaos that was brought by the GST holiday, the temporary GST holiday. You see, some multinationals that really will see Canada as just a market, really, like PepsiCo, they've actually published a letter on December 10th saying that we're not participating. that they won't be following the law, saying that they will continue to charge GST to their customers like Loblaws, Costco, Walmart, and everyone else because it's too complicated for a short period of time. They'd rather pay a fine than just recode their system because Canada is only 41 million people. It's a very small market
Right.
for PepsiCo. And
Hmm.
other CPG companies have done the same. So right now, Canadians are dealing with grocers that are paying the GST up the food chain, but can't charge GST on chips and chocolate and snacks and other things like that. So it's really chaotic. My guess is that the CRA, the Canada's Revenue Agency, will be incredibly busy. And of course, retailers are getting a lot of flack. They're getting a lot of criticism from customers because in some cases there are some errors, and right now there are reports that sometimes some grocers have decided not to opt because hours before the implementation of the GST holiday, the government did say that they won't enforce the law. They can't
Mm.
follow
Right.
and
Hmm.
surveil compliance. So right now, basically, they are saying, well, it's the law, but we won't watch. That will create awkward situations. So if you're a customer, you're going to a grocery store, you check your receipt, and all of a sudden you say, "Wow, I've been charged the GST." Are you going to ask the grocer, "Are you participating or not?" So yeah,
Oh, you'll likely ask at the checkout, not before you get in.
and now
Yeah.
you got to line up. You got to go to customer service. You may be busy, too busy to do that because it takes time. So you can
Right.
imagine the awkwardness and the chaos that was brought forward by the GST holiday, which really became law, but how it's been implemented is very much optional. And so that puts Canadians and consumers in a very awkward position to ask or ask whether or not the retailer is actually participating.
And I think the timing is awful too.
Oh,
This is the busiest time of the
oh,
year. Don't you think
Oh,
so?
so 40% of profits made by grocers is in November and December. So really it is
Mm.
the worst time of year to do this. And of course they only had a few weeks to well, the law itself, Bill C-78, received royal assent 2 days before its implementation. So my guess is that some independent grocers were just waiting, and they had 2 days to comply. And of course, when it ends on February 14th, they're gonna have to redo all the work they did back in December. So it's really a lot of work for little benefit, really, for Canadians. I personally, I think, I mean, they could have done two things here with the law. Either, and I did suggest to senators, maybe they should consider a permanent cut, like Harper did back in 2006 and 2008, or they should actually increase GST rebates given to Canadians that actually need it.
But still talking about this GST rebate. Today's waste collection day in my area. So as I was trying to pack the black bin, I stumbled on receipts in the house, and I became curious that, oh, how much taxes are on these receipts? By the way, here
Do
is
you
a
check your receipts
twelve
often?
dollar. No, no, I just check if they billed me right for products, but I'm not checking for taxes.
Yeah.
But
And how do
probably
you
this is
know?
the first
Like,
time I'm
depending of the retailer, sometimes you don't even know on what you paid taxes for because the way it's designed.
right. But here I have a $13 bill. I don't see any taxes on it. I have a $49 bill. It says my subtotal and total is actually the same, so meaning there's no taxes on it likely. And this one is from yesterday, just to stop over at the store after church. This is a $30 bill. My taxes on it is 50 cents. How does this make sense as a huge financial saving, according to Justin Trudeau and his departed finance minister?